Let me see.
Okay, my slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I don't know if people are ready. Should we start or?
Let me see.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and start. We have about 18 registered folks, and if they're going to be asking questions through the Q&A box at the end, and then we'll post this to the IDEA YouTube channel. So it's going to be recording starting right now.
Okay.
All right, so let's begin. So hello, everyone. My name is Todd Pascal, and we have Professor Zhen Chen, who's also going to be participating in today's IDEA Center, our first virtual one. So forgive us as we work through sort of the kinks here.
Yeah.
But we are glad to have everyone aboard. And today we'll talk a little bit about how to give good presentations. Okay, so as an overview, the one thing that we probably want to impress upon everyone here is that the key to giving a good presentation is to give good presentations. You just have to keep going at it over and over and over again. And to borrow sort of a phrase from a popular movie, if there's one word that you should take away from all of this, is that you should practice. Practice over and over and over again. Practice to your significant other, practice to your kids, to your grandma, practice to random people in the elevator. Just keep practicing what you're gonna say, how you're gonna say it. And that is the one surefire way that you can become better at this. And invariably, every one of us who starts off on this journey of being a scientist and communicating our ideas, unless you're one of these rare people who are supremely talented from the beginning, just about everyone is pretty bad at this to start. And the only way to get better is just to keep doing it. So take every opportunity that you can to practice and every opportunity that you get to give your talk over and over again. One of my personal heroes is Linus Pauling, and one really remarkable thing about him is that he was an excellent speaker. And here is a quote of someone who attended, this guy you may know, Asimov, who attended one of Linus Pauling's lectures. And he says basically that I attended a lecture by Linus Pauling. The talk was the best talk by anyone on any subject that I have ever heard. It's high praise from him. The talk was more than a talk to me. It filled me with a desire of my own to become a speaker and to become a really good speaker. He did. So here's an example of someone who inspired sort of this incredible person to proceed forward in their career just by giving a really good presentation. And so hopefully we will give you the tools that you would need in order to become Linus Pauling. On the other side, of course, is a talk that was given by Niels Bohr, who was, as accomplished, if not more, than Pauling, and certainly was is one of the great minds of the 1900s. But he was pretty much always known as a pretty poor speaker, and in particular, this is a quote of one of the talks that he gave, Fritsch said the microphone was erratic, bows aspirated, and sublime diction mostly incomprehensible, and his thoughts too intricately evolved, even for those who could hear. And so, in other words, you want to become Pauling, you do not want to become Bohr, although, of course, if you were to become Bohr, it's not such a bad thing either. So generally speaking, there are a bunch of different styles, a bunch of different ways in which you can make a presentation. And the key take home here is that there is no one size fit all. You basically would have to choose the style that best suits you and your personality. And some examples of different styles might be someone like Einstein, who was known to be soft-spoken and humble in his presentations. Linus Pauling, again, who was dynamic and charismatic in his presentation. Or someone like maybe Richard Feynman, who was demonstrative and humorous in his presentations. Of course, not just scientists, you can also go with maybe politicians, say an Obama, who tends to be more aspirational as compared to someone like Reagan, who's known as the great conversationalist and he was much more direct in terms of his presentation style. So whichever one suits you and suits your personality is the one that you should work on and try to improve upon as you go forward. As a general tip, you have to prepare beforehand. It's the most important tip. So you have to practice. So whenever you're giving a presentation, you have to go over it many, 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 many times and become comfortable with the material. And in particular, understand the material, and do not attempt to overwhelm the audience with sort of scientific verbiage to cover up the fact that you did not prepare properly or that you don't understand the material. Because if you do that and you're giving this to a scientific audience, your reputation as a scientist then is on the line, because people can see through that. They can see through when it is that you are just filibustering because you haven't prepared properly. More importantly, if the presentation only confuses the audience, then it's a wasted opportunity. It's a waste of everyone's time. More seriously, if it makes people irritated at you, that is a seriously wasted opportunity. And so whatever you do, make sure that you are well prepared, that you understand every single thing that you're going to talk about, so that people don't, one, become confused, or in the least, or more severely, become irritated. I put on here that initially, when you're starting off your presentation, it's important to precondition your audience, i.e. set up expectations. So some folks say, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, that it's better to start off just telling people exactly what it is that they are supposed to learn in this presentation, so that they know what you're trying to tell them, and they can kind of set their expectations adequately. Using just sort of stock, or what I say here, canonical MS PowerPoint templates is a no-go. Your presentation should not just be a bunch of graphs that you flip through with some fancy fonts. You have to take ownership. This has to be, in every sense of the word, your own presentation. And one really quick tip about the number of slides. The old euphemism that less is more is not necessarily the case in scientific presentations. I have seen talks where the speaker spent an hour and only went through 3 slides, and it really takes pull something like times where people try to cram 200 slides in 60 minutes, and that is equally incomprehensible. No one understands anything. Everyone is just confused. And again, it just serves to irritate everyone. So getting a good balance between too little and too much is going to be very important. And the only way to achieve that balance, again, is just to practice. Create slides, practice. You will know when you're taking too much time, or if you're moving too fast. So as a general point, I think it's important to point out that when we give presentations, it is expensive, and it's expensive in a lot of different ways. It's expensive in terms of time, because you have to take a fair amount of time in order to create your presentation, create your animation. It also takes the time of the people who are listening to your presentation. They have invested an hour, half an hour, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to listening to something that they're hoping would enlighten them. So, and time, of course, is the one commodity, insofar as it is a commodity, that we don't get back. And so once it's spent, it's gone forever. And so it's then the most important expense, not just in presentation, but in science overall. Of course, there is also an expenditure of energy, both mental and emotional energy, where you're trying to communicate some idea to people. So you're sort of going through the different pros and cons of different arguments and so forth. And emotionally, you're hoping that people appreciate what it is that you're doing, and you're vested in your presentation. And so So it's expensive in terms of energy. It's also expensive financially, of course, because you have to usually, if you're giving this at a conference or somewhere, you have to travel there. You have to pay registration fees, etc. One really important expense that I don't think is usually communicated is that it's giving scientific presentations in particular are expensive from a recognition point of view. And what I mean by this is that sometimes you are part of a team, usually you're part of a team. And if it turns out that you're not a good speaker, the team or you may decide that someone else who may have played a minor role in the project, but because they're a better speaker, they will be the one giving the presentation. And you know, usually it is whoever is up on the stage. Sometimes what happens is that that person gets associated with the work, even if they are not the one that actually did most of the work. And so by being a bad or a poor speaker, you may be preventing yourself from getting the recognition that you truly deserve for the work that you've done. So, so generally there are a lot of advantages to giving presentations, and I hope we don't have to convince you that you should do this as part of your training in particular. It's important that you present your material so that when you get out there, you can sort of help the general world with your scientific expertise. One really big advantage I have found from giving presentations is that it sort of affords you an opportunity to change your message on the fly in response to questions and that you may get from the audience. So that is as opposed to writing a blog post or tweeting or something like that, where it's a relatively static medium. So when you're giving a presentation, people can ask you questions and you can go back and forth, and that helps refine your message. Of course, there are some disadvantages to giving presentations. And the one particular one is that the audience is restricted to the pace of the speaker. So whatever you're presenting is sort of the information that the audience has right there at the time. There is very little time for them to cross-reference what you're doing or what you're trying to tell them. And so the amount of material that you can communicate is somewhat limited given a live presentation. So so for these types of disadvantages, then it's important usually for when you give a presentation to, at the end, devote a significant amount of additional material that the person can then refer to if they have additional questions. Leave your email so that they can follow up with you in general. Okay, so that was just a general introduction. Let's talk a little bit about different perspectives on presenting, and then Professor Sheng will jump in to give you very practical sort of tips and tricks in terms of doing a particular presentation. So the most important part of presenting, I think, is of course the speech component of it. And here, what I mean by that is that a speech targeted to an audience is essential for the presentation success. As a case study, I have here Robert Oppenheimer of the Manhattan Project. At 25, he was already famous for his work in quantum theory, and he became a lecturer at UC Berkeley. And he was giving a class on effectively quantum theory, and he had, I believe, an initial enrollment of something about 60 students. And what happened is halfway through the quarter, he found that actually every single one of the students had dropped the class except for one. And that one student was his grad student. And so part of the reason that everyone else dropped was that they thought that he basically spoke too quickly when he was giving his lectures. And he just assumed effectively that they were all as knowledgeable on the subject of quantum theory as he was, which it's probably not a good assumption. In fact, at that time, maybe there were probably only 5 people in the world that was as knowledgeable as he was. But the one really interesting thing about the way he gave, he taught this class and his lectures is that he actually thought he was going way too slow. And of course, all of the students thought that he was going too fast. And another common complaint from the students is that he made these obscure references to classical literature and philosophy. I mean, he was at his core a philosopher, and they just could not connect with that sort of material. And of course, the bottom line is that he failed to match the audience's expectations. He failed to match the purposes of the general class, and he failed to match the occasions, i.e. that these were first-year physics students and not his colleagues that he was presenting at a scientific meeting at. So the idea of matching the purpose, the audience, and the occasion is critical for being an effective speaker, as it were. So here's some general tips in terms of speech that you can employ in your presentations. I have here add some flavor to your speech, meaning no one really wants to listen to someone drone on for an hour at the exact same cadence, presenting the same materials, just reading off a chart. That is not interesting. If you wanted that kind of instruction, you would actually just go read the paper. There is no need for a presentation to simply be a bunch of figures in a paper. That's equally useless in my mind. It's useful to incorporate analogies and examples. Remember, of course, that when you're making a presentation, a scientific presentation, you're telling a story. You're not just presenting data. The third point is to maybe make a personal connection to someone in the audience, especially if you're a nervous person, especially if you have sort of the jitters, and we all do initially when we start off in this enterprise. One thing that I was told early is that you identify someone in the audience who looks a little funny and just focus on them and give your presentation as if you're talking to them. You know, everyone else in the room disappears and you're talking directly to them. That gives you a focal point as well. And of course, you know, they don't know that you're looking directly at them. Each of the person in the audience actually probably thinks you're looking at them. And so that sort of helps you make very personal connection. And I like talks generally that has a little bit of humor in it. You can, you know, obviously this is, you're not a comedian and you should not aspire to be, but incorporating a little bit of humor into your talk actually puts the audience in a little bit of at ease with you. Don't do it right away. Initially, if you do it right away, the audience usually don't know who you are and you don't know them. And so, but as you're going on in the speech, sprinkling in a little bit of humor tends to sort of make what you're talking about a little bit more relatable. Here's an example, again, from something that Feynman did, Richard Feynman. One time he was giving a talk in New Mexico at, I believe, one of the national labs in New Mexico. And he was introduced as a physicist, a theoretical physicist who enjoys playing the bongo drum as kind of his introduction. And then he gets up on stage and he says, "It is odd, but on those infrequent occasions where I've been called upon in a formal place to play the bongo drums, the introducer never seemed to find it necessary to point out that I also do theoretical physics." And so just sort of, you know, turning on the fly, he was able to turn this sort of playful attempt to humanize him as someone who plays the bongo drum, to turn that to relate it to what it is that he was going to talk to them a day about, which is theoretical physics. And that sort of kind of on the fly improvisation tends to be quite useful in making the audience relate to what it is that you're trying to say to them. Okay, so I will right now switch over to Professor Sheng, who's going to give you some general tips on presenting and being an effective presenter.
All right. Okay. So let me share my screen and we will continue. Okay. So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so thanks, Todd, for this very, very useful high level of ideas as well as a lot of strategies to enhance your presentation. So I think the second part of this talk is going to is probably more like, as Todd said, we are going to provide some useful tips, if they are not practical, but I hope at least you can refer to some general guideline to how to better prepare your slides as well as delivering your talk. Okay, so I will start from how to prepare a slides. It's not something we have to exactly follow, but as a general guideline, I think they will help you to shape your slides into a more consistent and a better looking shape. Okay, as we definitely, I think we want to make the slides looks as perfect as possible. But sometimes, you know, we kind of lost the track when you prepare like 30 or 40 pages of slides and you spend like a few days, and in the end you feel everything is there, and then you put a lot of information and you feel comfortable that you will be able to deliver the slides, I mean, in like 30 minutes, but in the end you spend more than an hour. Okay, so there are a lot of things that we can help you to shape the slides so that you can use time effectively, use the screen effectively. And then these are something I just summarized from my personal experience in the past 10 or 15 years. Okay, so in terms of preparing slides, here are a few guidelines I personally feel they are important, and something we can always use as a reference when you prepare your slides one by one. Okay, so I'm not going to go through in this page. Instead, I'm going to use more specific examples just to provide some contrast to see that what is a way to go and what is the way you should try to avoid when you want to leave a very good impression for your audience, even without listening to you. They see your slides, you can get some useful information and learn something from your slides. Okay, let's start from number one. Okay, so so in order to do a slides, you want to choose what kind of template you want, right? People use template very often, but I would personally suggest to avoid use very kind of blur or very sharp background, which might make your slides content difficult to read. Okay, so this is a slides background. Some people might like to use some very kind of gray color or a little bit of weak in terms of when you have your text content in your slides. So there's something I want to point out is that it is okay to have a background, but you should make sure the background do not leave very high contrast, do not blur your content, especially some important figures and information. Okay, so in terms of using backgrounds, I would personally suggest, or probably like most people are using, is just use a very clean, neat, white background. Okay, so this is something I personally would prefer, but if you want to really choose a background, try to make sure the background does not affect negatively to your content. Okay, so this is very just very simple point that we want to keep in mind when you start your first page of slides. Okay, this is actually a real slides that I got from from some of my my students. Okay, so the second thing is to select the right font size, especially you want to present a lot of content in one slide, which we definitely should try to avoid. But in the end, yeah, you want to really squeeze a lot of figures and content, you will end up with a very embarrassing condition that you don't have much space. Okay, so I give you one example. So this is also a slide I got, okay, from one student. These are real examples, okay, I picked. Okay, so you see you have 4 figures in one slide and you want to describe the conditions, what kind of specific experimental conditions you use. So you end up with putting 4 figures, and then each figure you want to label something. You don't have a lot of, actually you do have a lot of space, but your font size is just too small. When people sit in the back side of the room, they probably have difficult time, especially in the case, I'm not sure if we can see the, see my point, okay. Okay, so like this way, if you put a figure of a few figures and you have inserts inside your figure, and this becomes very difficult to see because you inevitably shrink down your size, the font size of your figure in your axis in the label, okay? And then you leave space to write some notes, and then turned out that you don't have a lot of space, and then you have a difficult time to refer to any of the figures, okay? So this is something we want to choose. And in general, I would personally give you a recommendation that the minimum size you want to put in your text is 24. I mean, the font size, okay? Sometimes you can push a little bit down to the limit, like 18, okay? But don't go too small, okay? Too small, it will make people hard to read, especially they sit very far away from the screen, okay? So font size. So being organized and neat, okay? So everyone wants to put enough information and then align both figures and the text content. So you should not do them randomly. Okay, organize is very important. So in the following slides, you will see. Okay, what does it mean by organize and neat? Okay, so this is very neat, right? It seems like it's very clean, and then the font size is large enough, and then so this is actually a report I got from one of my students, okay? The student has done very good experiments, a lot of exciting results. And then the slides I got from the student is just like this way, okay? So, I mean, even I'm his advisor, I cannot tell exactly what is going on, okay? So how you organize the slides is also important. You want to put good figures, large enough font size, and then put a very clean background, very neat, arrange them from left to right. Okay, use large font size here. Okay, so everything is easy to read, but I just lost idea. What does this slide talk about? Right? So be organized, be neat. That means you should not just put, I mean, a little information or clean information. You should make sure everything is understandable. Okay, so what exactly the sample is, right? So what does this curve mean? Refer to which sample? Okay, so you should organize your slides content in a way that people do not have to listen to every sentence when you present. Just look at the keywords in your slides. You can understand what is you are trying to talk about, right? So you should at least put the keywords like what a sample is, how it is made, and what kind of testing condition you get, right? And then with looking at the figures, you can correlate your data, your numbers to the experiment. Then you figure out, oh, what is, yeah, this slide is showing. Okay, so you need to organize in a way that enough information is provided, but not too much. Okay, and then this is also a slide. Okay, so this is something I think people might do. Okay, especially when you are really working in the last minute. You don't have time. Let's see in the slides, you see there might be like 20 times 2, maybe 40 lines, and you really need to have extra time, but you're running out of time. Okay, so this is something people just, oh, right, these days everyone has a smartphone, right? Just take a photo and then throw it into a slide and then send to your advisor or go to present in a group meeting. Okay, so even it is a group meeting, you should still try to make sure, okay, be clear, be organized, okay, be professional, okay, put enough information that you make people understand, okay, understand the slides content. Okay, so next one, okay, so people try to put a lot of information, sometimes make it happen in a case that people just get lost, okay, just get lost when you have a lot of slides, okay. So I removed the title of this slide. So this is slides I also got from some students, okay. So in these slides, in order to fully understand, okay, as a presenter, I believe we need at least 5 minutes, right? From figure 1 is X-ray diffraction, is the thermogrammetric analysis, is isothermal gas absorption. This is some Raman characterization Raman and Fourier transform infra Raman, and this is some SEM images, and you put the 2 different samples, and you have some note. Okay, so this is real example. Okay, this is real example. To some points, when you communicate privately or you communicate one by one, it is fine. Okay, you want to show a complete story using 1 page. Okay, you have to do this way. Okay, but you want to present this one even in front of 5 to 10 people. Okay, you still want to make sure you clearly deliver the information that every single figure can be understood. In this case, if you squeeze too many figures in one slide in front of audience or in a room, you only have 30 minutes. Okay, then this kind of slide, okay, might just take 20% of the entire talk. Okay, so try to make sure, okay, do not squeeze, okay, do not squeeze too much content in a single slide. Okay, maybe you pick 1 figure and with some very clear, very neat note, okay, a few very short sentences, okay, to convert the idea. Okay, so don't do this way. Okay, don't do this way in terms of using too much content. Okay, so use color and animation. I think this is a very common practice. Okay, very common practice to really correlate the information in the slide. Okay, so that's the very simple idea is can be understood in terms of paralleling a lot of information which look like similar information. Let's see, this is a matrix example, okay, matrix data that we put a few samples in a table. Okay, you think this table is going to help audience to understand you are doing a very systematic study and trying to compare different parameters. For example, here we're comparing the ratio and the thickness, okay, and in terms of the conductivity of a sample. Okay, so you really want to highlight which one is the best, which is the optimal condition you want to refer, want to use. Okay, so you can simply do is use the color to highlight this row. Okay, if you distinguish this row and others, audience can easily, okay, focus, okay, and pay attention on row 4. Okay, so this is something very very simple, but in order to distinguish important information from very complicated slides content, you can simply highlight. People will just shift their focus, and in this row they can get the desired information you want them to focus. Okay, so this is using how to use color to highlight important or most important information in a complicated slide. Okay, and animation. Okay, so this is also an easy way to help people to follow your speech, to follow your information. So initially, if you want to see, okay, so I study, for example, this is also the real example. Okay, so I just tune a little bit. So we're trying to compare 2 batch and then give information that's what is the best condition you want to use and what is the optimal result you are going to get. So you have 2 conditions and you get 1 figure. Okay, so very important thing is to make sure people can correlate all the information. Okay, so what you can do very easily is that, okay, so you simply use animation, okay, that correlates, or you are referring to this figure, okay, and then this is the condition that you can correlate to this result. Okay, and then with this you want to very simply or quickly, okay, provide a result in a very brief or short sentence in keywords. So you want to highlight something that you have a new result, you have new findings, you have mixed information. So this is the way you can slowly release the key information so people can follow very, very easily. Okay, and in the end, you can also put a few notes that, oh, this is something we want to pay attention in order to run the similar experiments or do a similar thing that they can have some tip to take away. Okay, so this is a common practice to use color and animation to do slides. Okay, so be brief. I think we also mentioned in mixing a few slides. Okay, so I just want to use the example. So this is also a real example I got. Okay, real example. the student just put slides in this way. They want to just, use a lot of detailed information. In the end, people prefer to read figures, right? Read figures. But now the problem is that if you do very long sentences, no one is going to read in the screen, okay? Or they will lose the track on your speech, or they will just spend zero time in reading this. They do not care about these kind of long sentences, okay? So in the end, what you are going to do is to try to avoid such long sentences. Again, use brief sentences, short sentences, or keywords, okay, to deliver your key information instead of doing this way, okay? So again, so in order to do this, the best, I would say, good practice is to put very clear figures, okay, and then use bullet points and list very short sentences or keywords like this way, okay? So this is how you want to put your information. Instead of using long sentences, use short sentences and keywords, okay, keywords. Okay, so be clear, okay, and figure size and font. This is something we already talked about, right? So, but specific in terms of figures, okay, in terms of figures. So again, yeah, this is a figure. So this seems to be, in terms of individual figures, even though if you want to put 4 figures, you still have the room. But the problem is that how to understand the figure, okay? So you see, this is the key information you want people to understand. You have 4 X-ray diffraction patterns and then refer to samples prepared under different conditions. So here, what you are trying to let people focus is actually only the peak position, right? Only the peak position, okay? So is this clear? Well, to some extent, it is pretty clear, right? You have 4 different colors, okay? You use colors, okay? So the size and label, okay? So the size is a little bit small, we can crack it very easily, okay? But there's one thing very important people have, or the student have missed, is that you want to label the peak, okay? What does this peak mean? Okay, is it 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, okay, 0, 0, 2, or 0, 0, 2, okay? So this is something in order to have people, especially when you want to deliver the key information, okay, you want to label, okay, you want to label the key message in the figure. For example, put the index of the peak, okay, or in another way, okay, what you can do is to align all the figures, okay, use the reference. For example, you put the standards peak, okay, and then label them, okay. So simply put these 4 figures without any labeling does not give any specific or useful information, okay. Label is very important, okay. So so this is the quick summary of all the tips, okay, all the tips, okay. So in terms of how do you choose background, the font size, okay, organize the content, okay, and then use neat, okay, do not cram or squeeze too much, use color and animation, okay, and use keywords, not non-sentences, be clear in the figure, and label them clearly, okay, and also you need to be consistent using your font size, the type of the font, okay, and there's one important information is that we want to make one slide, okay, try to only put 1 point or 1 meaning, okay, in 1 slide, okay. So this makes the slides tight and neat, okay. So this is these are some hopefully some useful tips to prepare your slides, okay, prepare your slides. And practice, as Dr. Pascal just emphasized, okay. So practice is important. The more practice you do, the better the presentation will be. Definitely, okay, definitely. So one way to do it is to write down your scripts, okay, write down your scripts. And when you practice, initially you probably need to do this for a few times, and then when you practice enough, then you will, essentially you will just remember them, and then it becomes very naturally coming out or jumping out from your brain. You can use very similar keywords or transitions or short sentences to connect your slides and to give similar information when you present similar content, okay? So practice by yourself first, and then, I mean, practice in front of friends and group mates, okay? And definitely, I mean, you practice more, you will, I mean, get better, okay? So the simple example is you practice 10 times, will definitely better than 2 times, okay? So it's just a very simple philosophy, okay? So this, okay. Okay. So sometimes when you practice, you want to record, use video, okay, to record your presentation and then look and watch by yourself, and then try to improve which way you can, you can do slightly better, okay. So when you present, when you practice again and again. So sometimes you can also take note or learn from effective speakers and adopt their successful habits or their ways to do good presentation, okay? So here, I just show one example. We probably don't have time to go through the entire talk, okay? We don't have time to go through the entire talk, but this is something I personally refer to, I personally learned. So this is Professor Aaron Magenda from Stanford, who was previously in UC Berkeley, is the director of the Berkeley Lawrence Lab, and he's doing. He does very, very good talk, and I personally like his talk very much. So maybe we can have let's see how many time, maybe a few minutes to go through this part of the talk. Okay.
I'm going to talk about the most important innovation of the 21st century. Well, I think if I ask each one of you on a more serious note, you will have maybe 100 different opinions on this. That's a very provocative topic. It's the most important one over 100 years. So I'm going to step back from the individual to a much broader issue. And I was pondering about this question in 1999, in the turn of the century. So what was the most important innovation of the 20th century? And I would have thought, as I think many of you, it'll be maybe the internet, or maybe it's wireless communication. So I sort of said, okay, let's make a list of all the things that completely changed our lives. And it'll be something like this, it'll be, maybe airplanes, electrification. It could be polio vaccination, nuclear energy, space, transistor integrated circuits, all of these. And what I found, to my surprise, the answer was none of these. And that, I'm sure, is sort of intriguing you. What was it? So let me take you on that journey. And the journey started in the 19th century with a physicist who asked the question. Sir William Crookes was the president of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. And he called upon science in 1898 to save the world from starvation. Why? Because the water quality was improving, the population was living longer, people were living longer, and the population was going up. But the soil in Europe, in Americas, did not have enough nutrition to grow food for all that growing population. So what were they doing in the 19th century? They were going to a small group of islands called guano islands. And guano in the local language is bird poop. You see this pretty talented bird out there. And there were millions of them landing on these islands in the South Pacific and basically doing the job. And so that was the most nutritious fertilizer. And so what people did was, that's the resource. Then they went, gangbusters out there. All these mountains of bird poop, they dug them up, put them into bags, shipped them all over the world. And that's what we used to grow food. And there were better and better ships. The Brits had faster ships than the Spaniards. The Spaniards went ahead of them. Then the Germans and the French, they were all competing with each other. And guess what happens when there's a resource like that? These islands, people were trying to decide, do they belong to Peru or Bolivia or Chile? And there was war. This was the oil of.
Okay. Yeah. So that's we need to stop here. Okay. We don't have too much time to go through the entire talk. It's very fascinating. Okay. Very fascinating talk. Okay. So look at the Aaron. Okay. Using a lot of body movement postures. Okay. And asking questions. Okay. Taking the audience to a journey. Okay. So this is something personally I cannot do. Okay. I mean, for me, I still need to learn, I mean, many different ways, many times, okay? But this is something we can always refer to, we can take notes from such kind of good, effective speakers and then try to adopt some of the habits and skills to improve ourselves, okay? So yeah, if you are interested, okay, you can go through this talk, you can just Google search in the YouTube, Aaron Magenta, okay? So this is very, very, good talk. I personally enjoyed very much. Okay. Okay. So again, okay. So you are giving a presentation. Okay. So you are giving presentation. You are talking. Okay. You are telling a story. Okay. So there are a few things we might need to pay attention. Okay. So definitely need to speak clearly and loudly enough. Okay. Not too loud, but loudly enough. Okay. And then show your energy, okay? So you can be calm, but still show enough energy, intensive, or, I mean, give a lot of, I mean, confidence in your talk when you try to convey some knowledge, okay? Like what Aaron just showed, okay? When he talks about people going to collect the bird's poop, okay? What comes out, okay? So this is, yeah, something we should add, okay? Show your passion, okay? Show your passion. Because you want people to believe, want people to learn something, okay? You personally have to have your own passion in the knowledge, in your slides, okay? In your research, in your work, okay? So eye contact, this is simple, okay? Look at audience, it's always useful, okay? To try to help you, okay? To communicate, okay? So you are telling a story, right? When you talk, you just not talk to yourself, okay? You are telling a story like, what Aaron just showed. He was telling, okay, he was taking the entire audience into a journey from a long history, like 200 years ago, okay? So you're telling a story, you are telling a work that people to go through together with the slides, with the content, with the information, okay? Okay, so this is something we want to do is, again, because you are telling a story, so you do not have a lot of time, okay? Try to keep it simple using keywords here, okay? Especially when you have a script, okay? You do not have to follow exactly as what you have typed in your scripts, okay? You can just pick the sentence to help you to connect different figures, different slides, okay? To help you to transit very, very smoothly, okay? And in each slide, focus a few key points and then repeat the key insights, okay? Try to help people to understand, to distill the most important information from the slides, okay? And there's one thing is that if you present the same content to different audience, okay? Let's say for day one, you are presenting to the entire group in your research lab, and then people are relatively more familiar with your research, with your slides, okay? You can be more specific, more scientific, more technically focused. But you go to a general audience, for example, you are going to present in a group of high school students with their families. You are doing a science / introduction to the university to show your university research work. Then you are probably going to do more like a background or introduction talk. So this is something we should pay attention when you talk. You make your presentation to different audience to adjust the slides content, okay, to make sure you make it more adaptable, okay, more adaptable. Okay, so take questions. So in the end, yeah, we always have a QA session for all the talks. So when you give, after finish your talk, when you take the questions, you want to listen, okay, listen to the audience very carefully. Sometimes you can just walk through, okay, walk into the audience, walk to the room, okay? Get close to them, okay? Get close to them and listen carefully and show your respect and try to catch the question very, very carefully, okay? Very carefully. And then with that, okay, you can, for example, you can go back to the stage and repeat the question to the entire audience to make sure everyone is on the same page, okay, is on the same page. And then you answer the question, okay? When you answer the question, you want to handle it just like what you are doing for a formal presentation, okay? Go through the QA session as the same way as you do your formal presentation when you previously present your own slides, okay? So this makes your QA session more smoothly and convey the information more clearly and make sure everyone is engaged and on the same page. Okay, so in a short summary, so these are key tips we want to bring, or hopefully it can be some useful takeaway message. So number one, definitely make a good slides. Okay, make good slides, and then you practice to yourself. Okay, to your lab mate, to your friends. Okay, to somebody you are not familiar with. Okay, or to somebody who cannot understand technique very well, okay, and then this will help you, okay, much by improving your slides to different audience, okay. So present with passion, with energy, okay, with passion, with energy. At least you want to make people believe, okay, you are doing great work, okay, you are doing great work, okay. So present like you are telling a story, okay, telling a fascinated, okay, story, okay. So and then skills from effective speakers. Watch videos in, let's say in YouTube, there are millions, okay, the tons of good talks recorded, okay. You can always learn very useful skills from these very effective speakers, okay. And there are a few useful readings. If you have time, we would recommend you to go through these resources. So we have put the links for you. If you are interested, feel free to dig more into these references. Okay. So this is what we want to share, and something you might not you might want to dig more, or you want to check more carefully in terms of the reference we have shared. But in short, we have, we try to give you some general guideline, or maybe you already have done much better. But in case you haven't realized, there's some simple or general guideline you can follow. So help you to make slightly better slides, and try to enforce you or encourage you to do more practice, and try to help you to find the ways to improve your presentation. Okay, so this is what we have today, and in the maybe next few minutes, we are going to take some questions if you guys have. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's see.
Everyone.
Okay, so Todd, I believe you can just unmute yourself. We can probably just answer the questions if you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. There's a QA box, right? I think maybe some question has been answered. Okay, it seems you have answered all the questions. You want to bring questions to the entire audience?
Sure.
Everyone? Okay.
So we had the first question was for practicing a talk, how much time should you devote to it, and is it recommended to memorize the script? And I think we went through this a little bit. I think generally speaking, my answer was that generally speaking, you want to practice for about 5 minutes for every minute that you're planning to talk. That's usually a decent rule of thumb, maybe 5-10 minutes. But you're going to be doing way more practicing than you're actually going to be doing talking on the day. It's important. I think Professor Sheng said 10 times, so whatever it is, whatever you need to in terms of getting getting ready and getting comfortable with the material is the most important thing. However long that takes, that's how much you should be doing. I generally don't like memorizing because I think it puts a lot of pressure on you, so that if you forget a word and you're kind of thrown off and then everything falls off the rails. So if you do it enough times, if you practice enough times, you'll find that, as Professor Sheng said, it just comes naturally to you. And there is no need for you to actually memorize. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I will see. You don't, in the end, you don't have to memorize anything, because these things, a lot of useful sentences, words, especially if you are doing technical things, okay, everything might coming out naturally from your brain when you have done enough practice. So initially, the scripts will help you at the very beginning, okay, at the very beginning, when you start your first year, second year, you start first a few presentations, you want to have some way to help you to make yourself comfortable and confident. And especially some people will got stuck and then blacked out without memorize anything. So totally lost the idea when you present in front of like 100 people. So this will help you at the beginning. But when you become a more experienced presenter, okay, so these things were just coming out naturally from your mind. Yeah.
Okay, I think the next question was, how do you deal with a hostile audience or hostile individual in the crowd? We've all given talks where there's one person who's trying to show how smart they are. And so how do you deal with that? I think we also covered this a little bit. I think, as Professor Sheng pointed out, you just want to repeat the question and ask them if you understand, like if you have got their question correct. That I think that serves a couple of purposes. It first sort of engages you in a conversation with them, and so people tend to not be as hostile if they're actually talking to you, as opposed to just throwing questions at you. And also it gives you a little bit of time to kind of formulate a response in your head. And then once you've formulated a response, once you've engaged them, just try to be as professional as you can. And if they're still trying to be antagonistic, then you can just say, that's an interesting question. We probably can't cover all of the details right now. We can talk about this after the talk and move on. I don't know if you have any additional tips for dealing with hostile.
Yeah, I think the most important one is the tip is to keep being professional through the entire talk, okay, at the beginning and during the QA session. I've seen this kind of things actually pretty often. And there's one example in our department. There was very, very famous, a big shot, and who published a few hundred papers. NAE members get like a lot of, good papers, highly regarded researcher, and came to present and give a seminar. And there's one student asked a question, which is kind of, personally, I feel that is very bad and kind of offensive. But the speaker is just very, very soft and just at least pretend to be very very calm, and then still straight answer the question that what he's doing is to do what. So I think in the most of the audience, people will be very fair and at least neutral, right? So if someone is hostile, someone is very aggressive, so it's just the individual, right? It's very rare case. So everyone will still appreciate your talk and your work. So you do not have to, or do not need to pay a lot of attention. Just let it go and do your own way. And what you are trying to do is to let the most of the audience to understand you, to follow you. So that is way more important to pay attention on the hostile individual. So yeah, I think that's common, but yeah, don't be affected by that. Yeah.
All right, and maybe the last question, do you believe there's such a thing as too many animations? Yes. Try to minimize them as best you can. But maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, there's one thing that in the animation, use simple animation is probably better than more complicated or fancy animation. Some people use a lot of flying from left to right, from top to bottom. Okay, I would suggest in scientific presentation, yeah, don't use that fancy animation. It's this simple way. Just try to connect the ideas, especially the slides showing difficult content to understand. You have a few pieces of information and you want to throw them one by one. Okay, so you do not want the audience to lose the track or get distracted by putting everything together at one time. You can use animation. Okay, there's another thing I would personally do is to when you are doing if someone are doing a TA, okay, and you are trying to help some undergraduate students, let's see, to understand the some examples and go through the entire solution, you can use a lot of animations, step-by-step solution to a very complicated problem, which is fine, okay, which is fine. But in most of cases, yeah, yes, dear, do not use too many, okay? Use simple animation, try to connect information and then go through the information together with audience. That is the main purpose.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. And we're over time, so this will be last question. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for participating. We do appreciate it. We know that it's a strange time, and we will get better at this as we go along in this process. Everyone stay safe and take care of each other.
Okay, yeah. So I think we got a last question. I think we can briefly explain or answer. So there's a question coming out just now asking, do you think we should have an outline slides at the beginning of the presentation? Okay, so I have this key point. Okay, so yeah, my personal experience or preference is to not have an outline. Okay, I personally don't like to put an outline because people will go through, if you're telling a story, people will going through together with you one by one. Yeah. I'm not sure what Todd, what your stance is. Yeah.
I think it could be useful in that it sets up the expectations as to what people are going to hear about. But you don't want it to be sort of the talk in itself, right? I mean, you want to give yourself the flexibility to sort of speed up or slow down. And if you make it too detailed of an outline, other than the sort of generic sort of things, then you're kind of boxing yourself in from the outset. And that could be not as useful. So I think maybe just a simple kind of generic, intro, blah, 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 blah thing at the beginning. It could be useful to set expectations, but too detailed an outline then is counterproductive.
Okay, I think that's probably all we have, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We're going to be posting this on the YouTube channel, and then I think we can share the slides if people still have questions about the slides.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.